Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls, and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate, and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, as the government ramps up its eco agenda in a newly released plan for energy independence, should Britain really be striving to make 95% of its energy green in less than a decade? I'll get my superstar panel's verdict on our over-reliance on renewables at 10 p.m. And tonight, I'm joined by Conservative commentator Dominique Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and Sunday Mirror political editor Nigel Nelson. Breaking tonight, as Russia is suspended from the UN Human Rights Council following atrocities in Ukraine, are sanctions against the country's sportsmen and women like Formula One driver Nikita Mazepin justified, or cancel culture in action? We'll debate at 10:30. Do we need to take Brexit saviour Lord Frost's warning about a Ramona resurgence more seriously? I'll explain why we've got to stay vigilant. To those haters and wreckers who want to bring Britain down in my digest next. Non-dom status is legal. Not that you would have known that when you look at much of the coverage today. So are critics overreacting to tax revelations about Rishi Sunak's wife? Mark Dolan will weigh in at 9:45. Are Meghan's former cheerleaders waking up to her self-absorption and entitlement? Star Daily Telegraph columnist and best-selling author Celia Walden thinks the Duchess has become indefensible following her attempts to copyright. And this is unbelievable, isn't it? One of the most notable words in the English language. Celia will be here at 10:20. And sticking with the royals, as a new Netflix documentary claims Prince Charles consulted Jimmy Savile on the monarchy's public image.
Jimmy had sent back to Charles a 5-part manual titled Guidelines for Members of the Royal Family and Their Staff.
Are the recent attacks on the future king unfair? Our royal expert Robert Jobson does battle with royal author and former Lib Dem Minister Norman Baker in the clash at 9:20. Could Boris Johnson's support of women-only spaces be a turning point in the gender wars? Spiked Online's Brendan O'Neill is the outsider at 9:30. And after a new government report reveals ethnic minority pupils are happier, more confident and more successful than their white peers, will the left finally accept that Britain's education system isn't racist? Writer and commentator Rakib Ahsan is uncancelled at 10:40. Plus, we've got the media buzz throughout the 10 hour, where we'll bring you tomorrow's newspapers hot off the press, and a new look at Benedict Cumberbatch's return to Marvel after failing to win over lovey Oscar voters.
Okay.
Yep, he swapped the power of the dog for superpowers. And a new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass will be revealed too. A cracking final show of the week coming up, I promise you. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. Those e-scooter killing machines, as I've branded them, really are living up to that nickname. A new study out of California reveals e-scooter riders are more likely to get into an accident and be injured than any other form of personal transport. So it's 150 for every million rides compared to just 104 on a motorbike or 15 on a bicycle. So that's why I fully back Baroness McIntosh of Pickering, who wants the law changed so e-scooter riders and cyclists can be prosecuted for using a phone while riding. She says that many folk have become absolutely terrorised on the streets by irresponsible e-scooter users. And I hear her. This is a growing problem. Also a growing problem, the revenge of the Ramonas. It's like a horror movie. My superstar panel on that imminently, the writer and political commentator Dominique Samuels, the former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the political editor of the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. But before all of that, the news headlines with Simon Poussey.
Hello, I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. Russia has been suspended from the UN Human Rights Council, with the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss saying the country is now a global pariah. The United Nations General Assembly saw 93 countries vote in favour of the move, while 24 were against. 58 countries abstained. The Foreign Secretary says the mounting evidence of war crimes in Ukraine means Moscow can no longer have a seat at the table. Russia has described the suspension as illegal and politically motivated. Meanwhile, NATO members have agreed to supply new and heavier weapons to Ukraine. Kyiv says it needs immediate reinforcement against Russia or it will be too late. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg has confirmed that a wide range of weapons are being sent to the country.
And the allies are providing them with different types of weapons, and we see the impact of these weapons on the battleground every day, because the Ukrainians have been able to inflict severe losses on the invading Russian forces.
The Prime Minister has defended the government's energy strategy after Labour criticised the plan as too little, too late. The government says it wants to reduce the UK's dependence on overseas oil and gas by creating more nuclear, wind, solar and hydrogen power facilities. Under the plan, up to 8 nuclear reactors will be delivered by 2030. Boris Johnson says the strategy is about making sure the UK is never blackmailed by people like Vladimir Putin again.
This is about tackling some of the mistakes of the past and making sure that we are set well for the future. We're no longer subject to, we're never again subject to the vagaries of the global oil or gas price. We can't be subject to blackmail, as it were, from people such as Vladimir Putin. We have energy security here in the UK.
Ketanji Brown Jackson has become the first black woman in history to serve on the US Supreme Court. Her appointment fulfills President Joe Biden's campaign promise to ensure the federal judiciary has a broader range of backgrounds. The Senate vote to confirm the 51-year-old judge was 53 to 47. The man accused of murdering Sir David Amess has told jurors he decided to kill the MP because he voted for airstrikes on Syria. Ali Harbi Ali told the court he had no regrets, saying, "If I thought I did anything wrong, I wouldn't have done it." Sir David was stabbed to death during a constituency surgery in Essex in October last year. The defendant has denied murder and preparing terrorist acts. A security guard who worked at the British Embassy in Berlin has denied spying for Russia. David Smith, who was extradited from Germany, pleaded not guilty to 9 offences under the Official Secrets Act at Westminster Magistrates Court. He is due to reappear at the Old Bailey Court next week. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Beware, the Ramonas are regrouping. A stark warning from Lord David Frost, one of the saviours of Brexit, on today's Daily Telegraph front page. well, let's be honest, he's much more respectful than me, so he actually said Remainers. But his point is one I've been worried about for many months. The Britain-loathing, EU-loving liberal elite in this country are on the march again, attempting to blame anything and everything that goes wrong for whatever reason on our beautiful decision to leave the European Union and the biggest democratic mandate in our history. Higher prices, empty shelves, travel delays, employment shortages. Forget the 2 years of economy-destroying pandemic lockdowns. Forget a European war. It's all down to Brexit. They seem to have forgotten those dark days for the EU of 2020, where their awful red tape and hatred of everything from the UK saw their vaccine rollout stutter as they did everything possible to discredit the Oxford AstraZeneca jab. Now, Frost points out, the hashtag Brexit shambles once again dominates Twitter. The European movement, backed by Andrew Adonis, says Brexit has failed. We were lied to. It's time to rethink. Former Treasury Permanent Secretary Nick Macpherson groans the effect on growth from Brexit is tangible. While Lord Frost rightly acknowledges there is little chance of a serious rejoin campaign developing in the short term, there is a serious concern about the future. He writes of the leaders of the pro-EU cause, their aim is to keep us aligned with the EU, often using the Northern Ireland Protocol as a weapon. They know that if the UK doesn't diverge much from EU law, it will be much easier to take us back in later if events work in their favour. To do this, they have to get it established in the public mind that somehow Brexit is already failing and thus destroy our nerve to do things our way. Their picture of Britain is not the one the rest of us see, living with COVID successfully, leading on Ukraine, coming out of the economic downturn faster than Germany, and with PMI business confidence levels higher than the Eurozone or the US. Keir Starmer, he's definitely part of the group Frost mentions, knowing he can't publicly express his clearly held desire to rejoin the EU, so instead claiming a poorly thought through Brexit is holding Britain back. That's why we must never forget, never ever forget, that while campaigning for Jeremy Corbyn to become Prime Minister, Starmer was very serious about overturning the biggest vote in British history. Look.
Our options must include campaigning for a public vote, and nobody is ruling out Remain as an option. We've agreed that it must be subject to another referendum.
Let's try it out now. So the Tories say, we're out. The Lib Dems say, we're staying. Labour says...
If you vote for Labour, the public will decide in a referendum. And there's now only one way. Whether in this government or the next, put it to the people.
Will the Labour front bench actually be putting down an amendment for a referendum and then vote for it?
I think it's more likely that it'll come from the backbench because almost every victory we've had...
Will Labour back it then?
Yes. There's only one way to solve this. This has to go back to the people. And Labour says, let's get it away from the politicians, put it back to the public. Yeah. But Labour's position, 3 sentences, get a better deal than his, put it up against Remain in a referendum and do that within 6 months.
We must never forget that Starmer tried to overturn the biggest democratic mandate in UK history. Now, Lord Frost is clear it's still too early to draw firm conclusions about our post-Brexit success story, especially amid the post-COVID recovery. But as he puts it, our destiny is in our hands and it is up to us to do the right things. Let's get on with the job. And that must start with calling out the Ramona hysterics as haters and wreckers who want to bring Britain down. But to respond now, my superstar panel, the Conservative commentator Dominique Samuels, the former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the political editor of the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. Dominique, I thought Lord Frost was absolutely spot on. Of course, this is not about saying we're going to rejoin the EU at the next election, but they want the infrastructure to remain in place so that can become their call at the election after. And I think that has to be reversed.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, they've had it quite easy. I mean, no one could have been able to predict the pandemic, which has, you know, seriously set the economy back due to our political choices in terms of lockdowns and restrictions. And that has had an effect on the economy. But I feel like the issue with viewing Brexit just in terms of the economy is one of the principal reasons why Remain lost in the first place. Because for many people, Brexit was more so about principle. It was about the idea of being sovereign, about being able to decide our own affairs. And that's why, number one, and this is one of the things I'm so thankful for, if we were in the European Union, we would have likely had, say, vaccine passports, for example, because they were there throughout all of the European countries, and Britain wasn't one of the countries that actually did that. And when we did do that, it didn't really last that long. So to say it's just simply an economic argument, I don't think will work. It will work amongst Remainers, but not amongst those that wanted Brexit in the first place.
Sean, why is it that so much of the left cannot just let it go? They will never just accept that they lost. And for the good of the country, actually, it's time to move on.
I think before I answer that, we have to look at what the left does with its campaigning. It's very, very patient. So they're trying to lay the groundwork now, not only to get back into Europe, but also to destroy and win other parts of the political world. That's why they're speaking in these terms, because they would hate to admit that our response to COVID was the correct one. Our economy has grown faster than any of the other G7 nations. They can't admit these things because it shows that their plans are wrong. Remember, this is a group of people who are going to nationalise basically everything. So they would have had no money to respond to any of the challenges we've had come down the pipe since Brexit. That's the first thing. Secondly, they have to find a way to make themselves relevant. The left has an existential problem. Up north, they're roundly hated because they don't like the country and they wouldn't support Brexit. And down south, they can't win a national election unless they appeal to everyone, and they know that. And the only thing they have to hold on is to Brexit, which is the wrong thing. They have not realised people voted against it. They didn't want it. And I'd say this, Brexit has been a success because it's what the people wanted. And all the powerful people on the left tried to stop it. Keir Starmer, the large parts of the Labour Party, what that shows you is the working class people in this country have had a big success. And again, it's the only big pay rise they've had in 16 years. They won.
Now, Nigel Nelson, I'm not going to call you a Ramona. You're a Remainer. And I'm not calling you a Ramona because I know that you accept the Democratic vote. You accept you lost, and that's great. Can you understand why I am very, very sceptical when Keir Starmer says that, given he led the campaign for a second undemocratic referendum?
He also did that some time ago. So I think you'll find that Keir Starmer is more or less in the same position where I am at the moment. I am a Remainer. I still think Brexit was a huge mistake. However, it happened. That has passed now. There is no going back on it. The second vote that Keir Starmer was calling for at the time was before we'd actually left anyway. That's all water under the bridge. It's important for all of us to get behind Brexit, to make Brexit work. As I say, if the vote was taken again today, I would still vote to remain, but it won't be taken again. It is history. Let's move forward.
Dominique, I like that. Of course I do from Nigel. But I don't believe that that is how Keir Starmer actually feels. We saw his true position. We saw he didn't respect the democratic vote.
And I think what they'll likely do, as Lord Frost said, is that they'll use the situation in Northern Ireland, as has the EU, to sort of try and convince people that we somehow need to align more with the European Union. And we would have basically left the European Union in all but name, and that just won't work. And as I said, the Labour Party in many ways have been handed a gift because the economy, although it's doing better than other G7 nations, it's not in a great place at the moment. COVID has exacerbated that. But one thing I would just say is that nobody, I think, ever thought that Brexit was going to be this short-term boom. We'd see the benefits straight away. It was always going to be something long-term, so therefore they have to...
It's a new way of running our country, and it astounds me that people on the left think they can point at people and say, you're stupid, because that's what it says. We have traditionally run our own country. We don't need Europe to run our country, and the idea that people on the left believe we cannot survive in the universe without the European Union is astounding to me. I had someone tell me about human rights. We effectively invented human rights. Europeans accepted that after we put it to them. You look at what's happening in Ukraine now. There's a lot of revisionism nationalism going on. The Germans wanted nothing to do with it.
Of course.
They're following
and Nigel,
our lead.
isn't that the point? OK, so you say you still don't think Brexit's worked. We could not have had the moral leadership that we've had over Ukraine if we remained part of the EU.
Of course you could.
We wouldn't have. We couldn't have done our vaccine rollout in the same way if we remained part of the EU.
No, I'm not so sure about that. There was an argument about the vaccines at the time, but mostly because the French were trying to be difficult.
Surprise, surprise. When it
comes down to Ukraine, this is more of a NATO operation than an EU one. There's no reason why Boris Johnson couldn't have taken the lead he's doing now in the same way he's doing with NATO countries. So,
yeah, but it just wouldn't have happened because we were dismissed as one part of the EU, and we no longer are.
But we had our voice in the EU. And we would still have our voice in the EU. So that is...
We didn't have a voice in the EU. They were regularly voting us down. They simply wouldn't listen to us. If they would listen to us, we'd probably have quite happily stayed. But the idea that we'd affected the EU from within the EU was roundly disproved.
But the argument at the time, which Dominique sort of talked about there, was the question of, do you think sovereignty, which is what you obviously back, is more important than economics? My view is that we would be better off in Europe, and I put that above sovereignty. We lost our sovereignty when we joined NATO, so in that sense, I don't find sovereignty in exactly the same way that if there is an attack on one NATO country, we all have to pile in. We have no choice. That is not a sovereign decision any longer.
Yeah, but that's a sensible decision because we are one continent.
And that's militarily.
We are neighbours.
Well, some of the EU things is a sensible decisions because we're one continent.
No, because we trade in the world.
Not yet.
No, we trade in the world, defend ourselves in physical terms. You cannot get around the fact that you have to defend yourself physically, but we can trade all over the place. And the important thing about the EU is not what we signed up to.
No.
We signed up to something else.
Exactly. Sean Bailey, Dominique Samuels, Nigel Nelson, my superstar panel, will be here all night. But also still to come, could Boris Johnson's support of women-only spaces give public figures the courage to finally stand up to gender ideologues? And could this be the start of the Tories' comeback at the May local elections? Well, Brendan O'Neill is the outsider on this at 9:30. But up next in The Clash, as a new Netflix documentary claims Prince Charles consulted Jimmy Savile on the monarchy's public image, are the recent attacks on the future king unfair? Our resident royal expert Robert Jobson does battle with royal author and former Lib Dem Minister Norman Baker in The Clash straight after the break. Want to know what you think on this one? It's a thorny issue. Do you feel Netflix ganging up on Prince Charles? I start to think there's something going on here with the fact that Netflix, guess who they employ? A certain Harry and Meghan. Dan at gbnews.uk is my email address. You can tweet me using the handle at gbnews. We've got a poll running there too. The results after the break.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Strong northerly winds have brought cold air southwards across the country, and with clearing skies overnight, we'll see a frosty start to Friday. But Friday promises at least some sunny spells. Low pressure is moving away, however, it leaves a legacy of north to northwesterly winds, cold air, and further showers during the rest of Thursday. Those showers increasingly, though, easing away inland, and they'll be more and more confined to northwestern coasts. But they'll still be of a wintry nature. We can expect snow above 150 metres for the hills of Scotland and some icy patches here first thing Friday. But otherwise, clear spells and a fairly widespread frost to kick things off. 1 degree there in Hull, 3 Celsius for Manchester. Temperatures below zero in sheltered spots. But in the far south, cloudier skies, some outbreaks of mainly light rain skirting along the south coast, keeping things frost-free as we start the day, but hanging about for much of the day, I think, in the far southeast. That eventually clears, and then it's sunny spells and showers for many. Again, the showers, mixture of rain, sleet and hail at lower levels, snow over hills. 12 Celsius in the south, 8 for Manchester, I think 6, 7, 8 degrees for much of Scotland. And it'll feel cold in the wind, but the wind is easing compared to Thursday. There'll be further showers coming through on Friday night into the early hours of Saturday for northern Scotland, Northern Ireland, North Wales. And again, a few icy patches around as we start off the weekend, because it's going to be widely a cold start to the weekend with a widespread frost once again. But despite the chill, actually, plenty of sunshine first thing Saturday, and with light winds, temperatures will rise through the day. As a result, the clouds will bubble up and we'll see further showers here and there, particularly in the north. In the south, that's where the best of the sunshine will be, and feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine. Another frosty start to Sunday before a largely dry and bright day.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Mark Dolan and Brendan O'Neill coming up, but time now for The Clash. With impeccably bad timing, a relationship Prince Charles would rather forget is being dragged up for the world to devour in a major new Netflix series. Amid a series of damaging international headlines for the royal family following Prince William and Kate's Caribbean tour and Prince Andrew's unwelcome return to the spotlight, the heir to the throne's once close friendship with the beastly paedophile Jimmy Savile has been laid bare.
It's not just a couple, it's not just 3 or 4, there's absolutely loads of files of it. December 22nd, 1989. I wonder if you would ever be prepared to meet my sister-in-law, the Duchess of York. I can't help feeling that it would be extremely helpful to her if you could. I feel she could do with some of your straightforward common sense. Sir Charles says to Jimmy, I attach a copy of my memo on disasters, which incorporates your points, and I showed to my father, and he showed it to Her Majesty. Jimmy had sent back to Charles a 5-part manual titled Guidelines for Members of the Royal Family and Their Staff. Jimmy seems to be a kind of unofficial chief advisor to the Prince of Wales.
Far from ideal, but it's safe to say Netflix's already strained relationship with the royals is now at an all-time low. I've written a column on this for the Mail Online tonight, and I say in there the damaging Savile documentary promoted to British newspapers solely around the disgraced BBC presenter's friendship with Charles comes hot on the heels of the grotesque Diana the Musical, amid a feeling that Netflix is increasingly looking to broadcast ever more provocative content about the British royal family. But this fresh headache does come at a worrying time for the Prince of Wales, as a new Ipsos poll reveals middling popularity, with almost half of Brits thinking he should step aside for his son Prince William in the line of succession. So, with media giants like Netflix intent on royal mudslinging, we're asking, are the recent attacks on Prince Charles unfair? Send me your thoughts to Dan at GBNews.uk, tweet me at GBNews. But weighing in on this now, our favourite royal commentator, Robert Jobson, and the former Lib Dem Minister, Norman Baker, author of And What Do You Do? What the Royal Family Don't Want You to Know. Jobbo, you think this is unfair on Prince Charles? Why?
I think that we've all got 20/20 vision with hindsight, and you've got to remember, and I'm sure Norman was an MP, and they could have, a lot of these things could have been raised in Parliament underprivileged. I know as a journalist, during the height of Jimmy Savile's appalling behaviour, newspapers were being sued left, right, and centre, and judges were awarding thousands of pounds Jimmy Savile for the mistreatment of his character. Look, it's a misjudgment by the Prince of Wales. Clearly, it is. But at that particular time, are we going to then call into question the judgment of Mrs. Thatcher and all sorts of leading figures? At a time when Fleet Street was behind the scenes trying to expose this guy for what he was, and he would regularly get calls from journalist friends of mine who he's not, and they'd say, "Oh, Jimmy, I suppose you're not speaking to us anymore." He said, "No, I love to speak to my friends from the tabloids because they write these things about me and I get thousands of pounds." So I think it's easy in hindsight to criticise the Prince of Wales. I'm sure he's cringing at everything that's been written and shown about him in this documentary. A lot of it actually came out about 10 years ago. So I think it's just the fact that it's new to a new generation. But a lot was written 10 years ago about his behaviour. There was talk that he was quite an advisor in terms of, can you believe it now, marriage guidance in terms of Charles and Diana, which was something else that he was supposed to have done. But this character was very, very out there in the sort of, in the 80s and 90s and children's TV. I remember we all wanted to get a Jim will fix it badge. So I don't know. It's easy in hindsight to look back when we know exactly what a vile character he was. But he was right in the heart of the establishment. He had a lot of powerful people in his pocket. And I don't remember too many MPs speaking out against him.
Norman Baker, you say this coverage isn't unfair to Prince Charles. He deserves it.
Well, I don't know about deserves it, but Prince Charles is a public figure like anybody else in the public limelight who's an MP or a councillor or whatever else. And I think it's legitimate for the public to know about the actions that the heir to the throne has taken. He'll be king before very long, I imagine. And therefore, his judgment is a matter of public interest. Obviously, Prince Charles didn't know what Jimmy Savile was up to. No one's suggesting that in the least. But the fact is, he did make a serious misjudgment in becoming friends with this man. He became very close friends. Jimmy Savile had almost unparalleled access to Clarence House, for example. He did, as Robert says, advise him and Charles and Diana on their marriage. So in that case, Jim didn't fix it very well at all. And we've also had a situation where, you've seen the letters which Netflix have produced. Well, they are genuine letters. He did write those letters. And when Savile died, it was Charles and Camilla who led the tributes, in fact, at that point. So even at that stage, he was still supporting Jimmy Savile. Now, it's true that Jimmy Savile was very keen to be friendly with Prince Charles and others in the establishment to make sure that he got some protection from himself. But, the things about Jimmy Savile were known a long time ago by many people. For instance, I know from my days as Transport Minister that he was dropped by British Rail. He used to do the adverts of British Rail, this is the age of the train and all that. He was dropped by British Rail because they were told about his, shall we say, unseemly behaviour in the mortuary at Stoke Mandeville Hospital, along with various dead bodies there. So they dropped him.
And it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace that he got through his life with this conspiracy of silence through so many in authority. I agree with that. But Job, sorry, you come
clearly, he got past all sorts of things, didn't he? The Secret Services would have been looking into them. We know, God, they used to look into Labour MPs all the time, like Harold Wilson and God knows what else. This guy got a knighthood. He got vetted to go into Clarence House. There's obviously a huge amount of errors have been made along the way, and people have been hoodwinked by him. I mean, he was a very, very convincing court jester.
No, I understand that. But Jobbo, what I just want to ask you about, though, is that it feels like, especially from the Netflix point of view, that there is some sort of growing campaign against Prince Charles. Obviously, Prince Charles has been very concerned about the way that he's portrayed in The Crown. There have been very bad portrayals of the royal family, including the Queen in Diana the musical. And is it just me thinking, isn't this odd that all of these shows are coming after Prince Charles's own son, Prince Harry, and his wife Meghan have signed up as employees of Netflix? You can understand, Jobbo, can't you, why people close to Prince Charles are very angry with Netflix because it feels like there's some sort of campaign against him.
Well, when there's lots of money being passed in hands between Harry and Meghan, I'm sure there must have been a few deals along the way. You never know. But the fact is, they're supposed to be separate. My feeling is that it's for them. It gives them good traction. It keeps them out there. It keeps the controversies going. I think that really, yes, they did lead. In terms of again with Jimmy Savile, they did lead the tributes, Charles and Camilla, but as did a lot of politicians, Norman. And then within about 3 weeks, BBC had to completely retract that documentary they put out. But my feeling is that, he's actually, Charles would do better just to rise above it all, actually, because, at the end of the day, Netflix is dealing, not in this case, but in the case of The Crown, with fiction, although it's supposedly loosely based on fact. And, and that Ipsos poll that came out, it's quite easy to say that only 48%, wanted to be the next king. Well, actually, that's up 11% over the last 4 years in his favour. So these things, the statistics can be sort of done either way. But this isn't going to help. People of my son's generation, 20, don't even know who Jimmy Savile was, except for they look at him and think, how could anybody not have seen what he was? And that's the reaction of some of the younger
Complete and utter scumbag. No, indeed. Norman Baker, you say you think Prince Charles is in trouble for a whole load of things. What are you referring to?
Well, I mean, look, there's an issue about Prince Charles's judgment. Prince Charles has got many positive points, let me just say that, to be fair. But there is an issue about his judgment, and he gets associated with a number of people over the years who really ought not to. Jimmy Savile's the most obvious example, but there's a previous Bishop of Lewis, who was in my constituency, obviously, down here in Lewis. And the Bishop of Lewis was admitted gross misconduct in 1993 with a 17-year-old boy he was whipping. And Prince Charles defended him after that and kept in contact with him, and only broke off really when it was much later in the day. And by the way, that 17-year-old committed suicide. There's also I think
he broke off at the end when he over the conviction, didn't he, Norman? I think at that time,
that's right.
Clearly his judgment.
That's right.
It was when
it was a long time, but the Bishop of Lewis admitted guilt in 1993, took a caution at that point. There's also the business people Prince Charles had dealt with. One of them was the Turkish businessman Kem Uzan, who was subsequently sentenced to jail for fraud-related offences, with Kenneth Lay, the chief executive of Enron. These people want to be associated with Prince Charles, so they give them cover as respectable people. That's what they do. That's what Jimmy Savile was doing. And Charles really hasn't exercised the judgment in terms of who he has around him. And that's a serious issue that he has to face, I think, going forward. And of course,
Norman Baker, what's your reading of this poll? What's your reading of this poll? Because Jobbo says, actually, it shows Prince Charles's popularity is increasing. I would say that's maybe quite a kind reading of the poll from Jobbo, because my reading of it is that, over half of Brits... Well, it is growing.
It's got 11% in 4 years. It's a low start. I'm not saying that. But it has gone up 11% in 4 years. So that's just me telling you what.
But Norman, no, and I understand that. I understand that is the fact. But Norman, I would argue the Queen is in her twilight years. Is it not worrying that less than half the British public want Charles as king?
It is, and to be honest with you, the Queen's got tremendous respect from everybody, and she's a difficult act to follow. But Charles has been hanging around for decades now, and people know all about him. They know his good points and his bad points. And I think they probably think, someone it's not his Charles's fault, but someone over 70 coming to the throne isn't exactly a brand new brush, is he? And they think they prefer William. Well, the reality is that the hereditary principle is such that you get who's next in line, whoever they are. You can get someone diligent like the Queen, or you can get someone who's basically a Nazi like Edward VIII. You don't get a choice in these matters. It's who's next in line. So I feel a bit sorry for Charles in that respect. He's waited a very long time to be king, and now people are saying, let's skip a generation.
Yeah, it's a bit of a sweeping thing to say that Edward VIII was basically a Nazi, but I hear what you're saying.
No, it isn't, Robert, actually. Believe me, it isn't.
I've researched it as well, Norman, and I don't think he was. I think that he had bad associations, but I don't think he was a Nazi. I think that's quite a sweeping statement.
Well, he was certainly quite close to Mr. Hitler, was he not?
Not as close as you're saying. Not as close. It's an easy sweeping. It's an easy swipe, and I think that it's not as it's not as simple as that.
But his association with Hitler was a disgrace, and his association with Hitler was a complete disgrace. And thank goodness, we don't have any issues like that with Prince.
Quite right.
Robert Johnson, our royal commentator, thank you so much. And the royal author, Norman Baker.
I can tell you that.
Thank you so much. So who do you agree with on this? It is a thorny one. It is a thorny one. In this case, I do think Prince Charles is being treated unfairly. I have to be honest with you. But Lola on Twitter says, of course it's unfair. I'm pretty sure we've all been tricked by someone in some capacity or other during our lifetimes. I know I have. From Dot, most people thought Savile was a good guy. To single out Charles to discredit him is unacceptable. And that is exactly what is happening here. And Janet on email says, someone has an agenda here. Prince Charles would make a good king. He's a decent man who keeps being vilified. Why? And who wants this? Well, I think that's a very good point. Your verdict is now, and 64% of you agree that the recent attacks on Prince Charles are unfair, while 36% of you say the attacks are not unfair. What I would say is, when is Prince Harry, Prince Charles's son, going to take a moral stand and say, I will not work for a company in Netflix that continually slags off my relatives? Because it's not just Prince Charles. That disgraceful Diana the Musical claimed that his mother used HIV patients for publicity, and yet still Prince Harry takes the millions from Netflix, which I think says a lot about him. But coming up, non-dom status is legal, so are Tory critics overreacting to tax revelations about Rishi Sunak's wife? Mark Dolan weighs in soon. But next, will Boris Johnson's support of women-only spaces hail the return of common sense when it comes to discussing gender? And could this be the start of the Tories' comeback at the May local elections? Well, Spiked Online's Brendan O'Neill is the outsider. He's here straight after the break.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls, and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate, and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
A first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages coming up at the top of the hour. But now, Brendan O'Neill is tonight's outsider. The trans debate all comes down to simple biology for most people, but it's also been a tale of 2 very different leaders. Here's what squirming Starmer had to say on the issue.
Can have a penis. Look, I'm not... I don't think we can conduct this debate with... You know,
sorry, have I offended you in some way?
No. It's just I just.
A woman can have a penis.
I don't think that discussing this issue in this way helps anyone in the long run. What I want to see is a reform of the law as it is, but I also am an advocate of safe spaces for women, and I want to have a discussion that is. Anybody who genuinely wants to find a way through this I want to discuss that with. I do find that too many people in my view, retreat or hold a position which is intolerant of others. And that's not picking on any individual at all, but I don't like intolerance. I like open discussion.
Oh, yeah, right. Whatever you say, Keir. And like night and day, here's the Prime Minister's effort from yesterday.
I don't think that biological males should be competing in female sporting events, and you know, maybe that's a controversial thing to say, but it just seems to me to be sensible. And I also happen to think that women should have spaces which are, whether it's in hospitals or prisons or change rooms or wherever, which are dedicated to women.
So could that common sense approach from Boris on this hot button issue mark a Tory turning point among voters ahead of the local council elections in May? Well, Spiked Online's chief political writer Brendan O'Neill joins me on that. Brendan, do you feel like this is a bit of a landmark moment in the culture wars?
I hope it is, yes. I'm really glad that Boris has said what he said. I mean, it's really shocking that we should be surprised that a politician knows what a man is and knows what a woman is. But this is the situation we find ourselves in. So many members of the political class, like Keir Starmer, can't answer basic questions like, can a woman have a penis? The answer to that question is absolutely not. If you have a penis, then you are a man. You might identify as a woman, but you are a man. And their inability to answer those kinds of questions, I think, will be very shocking to vast members of the public who actually understand biology, who understand that women need certain spaces and certain rights, and will be horrified that the politicians can't say those kinds of things. So I think Boris will have won a lot of support amongst ordinary voters for the comments that he made.
Yes, and I completely agree it should be simple, but the reason it's not simple and why Brendan and I give Boris a lot of credit for this is, you know, thanks in large part to his wife, Carrie Johnson, up until now, Boris had essentially been in lockstep with the organisation Stonewall. And both in terms of these comments and also his decision on trans conversion therapy this week, he really split with Stonewall.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's actually doing something quite brave in the sense that we know for a fact that people who say these kinds of things tend to be demonized by the trans lobby and by noisy people on social media and by sections of the mainstream media. Just look at what's happened to J.K. Rowling for saying the most ordinary things about men, women and biology. She's been basically witch hunted and treated as the scum of the earth. So it takes a lot of courage, bizarrely, for people to stick their head above the parapet and make these kinds of points. And I think what Boris Johnson said about conversion therapy is correct too. It is not conversion therapy to tell young children who are confused about their gender that they might want to wait before doing anything about it, that they shouldn't rush onto puberty blockers, that they shouldn't take medication that could have lifelong consequences. The idea that that is conversion therapy is abhorrent. That's parental advice. That's good advice, in my view. And I think actually the great irony in this discussion is that sometimes trans intervention can be a form of conversion therapy, because if you're turning, I don't know, an effeminate boy into a girl, or if you're turning a young lesbian into a man, that can be seen as a form of conversion therapy, where you're essentially treating young gay people because you see them as having a particular problem. So I think he's right not to ban giving advice to young trans people and instead allowing parents and experts to advise youngsters not to rush into this kind of thing.
I know, because so many kids get sexuality and gender mixed up and they need to work it through for a good few years. And I completely agree with the concern around that. Brendan, is it important, though, that these May local elections are coming up, and would Boris Johnson have split with Stonewall and Carrie if they weren't, I wonder?
That's a good question. And a lot of people are saying he's only doing it to try and win some brownie points and try and win some public support. But I actually think that's not a bad thing. That's what politicians are meant to do. They are meant to try to tap into public concerns and to try and encourage people to vote for them by saying what we consider to be the right thing, what we consider to be the sensible thing. So if that's what he's doing, I think that's good. I hope he's not doing it for short-term gain. I hope he's going to stick to these kinds of arguments and stick to his criticisms of the excesses of the transgender movement. But I think what Boris and other politicians need to realise is that there is a large appetite out there for criticism of wokeness and for politicians who take a stand against woke ideologies. A lot of people out there want politicians to do that, to defend reason, defend freedom of speech, defend biology, and defend British history. And if Boris did more of that, he'd win more support.
Absolutely. Look at the popularity of Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, who's got a good shot of being the next US president, I think. And then you've got the most important female movement, arguably, Britain, since the suffragettes and the Respect My Sex If You Want My Ex, which has already had such momentum behind them. So I think it makes the Labour Party look unelectable, doesn't it, if they continue down this path?
Absolutely. The way Labour has treated women has been absolutely shocking and quite disgusting. They can't even bring themselves to say what a woman is. And if you can't say what a woman is, how can we expect you to defend women's rights or to defend women's spaces or to defend women's sports? There is no wonder at all that lots of women are refusing to vote for the Labour Party or any party that doesn't respect their sex, as this new movement says. I think these women are absolutely right, because the very bottom line, if you're going to stand up for women's rights, is to be able to talk about women, to be able to use that word, and to be able to define a woman as an adult human female. That's what more politicians need to do if we're going to take them seriously as people who will stand up for women.
Brendan O'Neill, thank you so much. We'll speak next week, Brendan. But coming up, should Britain really be striving to make 95% of its energy green in less than a decade? Well, I'll get my superstar panel's verdict on our over-reliance on renewables after 10 p.m. But next, as the tax affairs of Rishi Sunak's wife are targeted by the left, despite her not having broken any laws, isn't this a case of non-dom, non-drama? Our very own Mark Dolan does the bookkeeping straight after the break.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
The last greatest Britain and Union jackass of the week coming soon. But first, Mark Dolan is here, and the pathetic attacks on Rishi Sunak's wealth turned personal today after revelations about his wife's totally legal tax status. So Akshatar Murthy, an Indian citizen, has non-domiciled status, meaning she legitimately doesn't pay UK tax on her foreign income, largely earned from shares in her father's software company. It's all 100% above board, and it was all declared when Rishi became a minister in 2018. But Labour and the craven left-wing media, some on the right too, I have to be honest, couldn't resist spitefully weaponising the Sunak's family wealth. Labour demanded the Chancellor urgently explain his wife's tax affairs, while Shadow Economic Secretary to the Treasury, Tulip Siddiq, described the arrangement as staggering. What's staggering to me is that we're using the wealth and financial success of our Chancellor as a stick to beat him with. Mark Dolan, great to have you here. Why are the left so opposed to successful people thriving at the heart of government?
Well, Dan, there's an old saying which is no one kicks a dead dog. The bottom line is Labour feel very threatened by Rishi Sunak because we currently have a Prime Minister who's the most popular and successful, charismatic politician of his generation, Boris Johnson, and waiting in the wings to replace Boris when he decides to quit will be Rishi Sunak, who is the most talented generation of his politician. Honestly, the idea of a handing of power from Boris eventually to Rishi Sunak is Labour's worst nightmare. You could have 10 or 15 years worth of Conservative governments between the two men. So Labour hate Rishi Sunak. He's a huge threat to them. And it's very sexist because they've gone after his wife. Now, last time I checked, Dan, Akshata Murthy was not the Chancellor. She's the Chancellor's wife. And it's very, very sexist to think that somehow her money is his money. As you pointed out, she's not broken any rules. Rishi Sunak himself is a self-made man, a millionaire, made his cash in the city. And his wife comes from a very successful Indian family. The income that she enjoys tax-free from her non-dom status is from shares in an Indian software company that her father created. Nothing has been done that was illegal. She's not a tax evader. She comes from an accomplished family. Rishi Sunak is a winner, and Labour hate it.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it, Mark? Because we have a Prime Minister in power at the moment who, yes, is brilliant on so many levels. I completely agree. And, you know, I've, on the whole, lockdown aside, been a supporter of Boris Johnson. However, one of the issues is, Mark, is that he's got financial issues, personal financial issues, and it worries him. He's got lots of kids he needs to support, and he can't make the money that he very easily could if he wasn't Prime Minister. So sometimes his attention might be focused elsewhere because he's got to pay the bills. And how insane that we have the most important person in the country worried about paying the bills. That's not the case with Rishi Sunak. He has so much money. He never has to worry about anything other than his job as Chancellor, which I think you could actually look at as quite a positive thing.
Well, that's right. I mean, Rishi Sunak was not born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Yes, his wife is minted. His father was a GP. His mother was a pharmacist. In fact, he did the accounts for his mum's pharmacy when he was 16. This guy clawed his way up to the top of the city. And I want people like that running the country, Dan. I want the caliber of Rishi Sunak in government because he's proved it in the private sector. He's smart. He's accomplished. He's energetic. And I think he's the future. So, you know, that's why Labour have worked so hard to have a go at this guy. I think he should be flattered by the attention. And I don't think the public will be fooled by this politics of envy, Dan, because that's what it is. If you listen to Labour, being rich is a crime. Do you remember when Keir Starmer attacked Boris Johnson at the dispatch box for having a WhatsApp relationship with James Dyson, the billionaire founder of Dyson? And this was whilst we were trying to get our hands on ventilators early in the pandemic. And somehow the thrust of Keir Starmer's criticism was that you know, Boris Johnson was you know, having messages and having a relationship with someone that happened to be filthy rich. Well, I want our Prime Minister talking to billionaires. Billionaires are the most accomplished people in our society. We enjoy the tax income that they generate, and we enjoy their expertise. And long may that continue.
No, indeed, I completely agree. But some of the attacks, Mark, it has to be said, are coming from the centre-right. So we had Claire Foges, former speechwriter for David Cameron, saying that in her opinion, Rishi Sunak is just too rich to be Prime Minister. She says it's OK to be a little bit rich, sort of millionaire rich, but multi-millionaire rich, no, the British public won't have it.
I just think this underestimates the British public. It patronises us. It makes us sound really small-minded, that we just couldn't bear the idea that somebody very independently wealthy was in power. The bottom line is, I repeat, that if Rishi Sunak becomes Prime Minister, then he'll be a wealthy Prime Minister who made it in the city. It's his wife who is the heir to $1 billion billion-pound fortune, it's not him. And we live in the modern world. It's 2022, and husbands and wives have their own financial interests. You know, we don't live in the era of joint bank accounts. That's just not how it works anymore. These people are high flyers. And honestly, I think the British people predominantly are very aspirational. I think most people watching your brilliant show, Dan, are people that want to make the best of their lives. And they work very, very hard for their families. And if they can aspire to more, they will. Look how Margaret Thatcher expanded the aspirations of this country in the 1980s by letting people buy their council houses, by letting them start businesses, creating a low tax environment in which to thrive. We had an economic boom in 1987. And, you know, that was the flavour of Britain in the 80s. And I think the likes of Sunak would like to bring that back. I will say, Dan, that the halo has slipped slightly for Rishi. You know, I've been his biggest supporter, and I've actually called for him. I've called for him to get the top job at number 10. And when Boris
that's
does
not
that,
looking so good now, Mark. It's not looking so good now.
It's aged as badly as I have. But the thing is, I do stand by. I stand by my support of Sunak. But I think that he's been naive at times. I think the staged photo call at a Sainsbury's petrol pump, filling up a red Kia that didn't even belong to him, was silly. And actually, that's patronising to the British people, and he shouldn't be indulging in that kind of Instagram photo op stuff. He's supposed to be a grown-up politician. Yeah. That wasn't great. And of course, he is now the tax-raising Tory Chancellor. And I think that would be far more damaging than this sort of soap opera around his own wife's bank balance.
Yes. Well, Mark, I'm not singling you out here, but all I'm going to say is I think some of the people who called on Boris Johnson to go did it in haste. And I think I've seen the way that he has performed over this Ukraine crisis and thought, actually, he's the man who deserves the job, which he, of course, won in a landslide election. So I've criticised Boris a lot, but I do back him to stay as Prime Minister.
Well, do you know what I say to that, Dan?
Over trans rights, for example.
Absolutely. Listen, Dan, you know, what I said days after my desire for Sunak to come in was that Boris is going the right way about proving me wrong. And if I can be wrong about Boris, I'll be the happiest man in England.
And Mark, 20 seconds, but you're here the next 3 nights. You know I'll be watching. What can I look forward to?
Oh, listen, we've got so many big debates. We're going to talk about sex at the weekend, actually.
Oh, no, please don't. What?
Yes, I'm afraid so, yes. And, you know, I'm very, very racy, our programme.
Oh,
so
my
we do like to keep an eye on that. Also, should we bring...
I hope Anne Widdecombe isn't watching, Mark.
And starring in it.
Oh, don't. You're making me want to tune out. But, of course, Mark, I will be here, Mark Dolan, next 3 nights at 9 o'clock. It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, as the government ramps up its eco-agenda in a newly released plan for energy independence, should Britain really be striving to make 95% of energy green in less than a decade? You'll get your first look at how tomorrow's papers have covered this massive shake-up next. Then I'll debate with my superstar panel, the Conservative commentator Dominic Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey and Sunday Mirror political editor Nigel Nelson. Breaking tonight as the G7 condemns atrocities committed by Russia. Is it fair for the country's sportsmen and women to be bearing the brunt? We'll dig into Formula One driver Nikita Mazepin's claim that sanctions are cancel culture in action. And we'll explore why Russian women are cutting up their designer handbags in possibly the most tone-deaf protest of all time. Wow, all coming up in the Media Buzz at 10:30. Has the Duchess of Sussex become indefensible? Top Telegraph columnist and best-selling author Celia Walden thinks so, following Meghan's gobsmacking attempt to trademark one of the most notable words in the English language. She's here at 10:20. After a new government report reveals ethnic minority pupils are happier, more confident and successful than their white peers, will the left finally accept that Britain's education system isn't racist? Writer and commentator Rakib Hassan is uncancelled at 10:40. Plus, I'll reveal my final Greatest Britain and Union Jackass of the week before the night is out. But first, the news headline.
Hello, I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. Russia has been suspended from the UN Human Rights Council, with the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss saying the country is now a global pariah. The United Nations General Assembly saw 93 countries vote in favour of the move, while 24 were against it. 58 countries abstained. The Foreign Secretary says the mounting evidence of war crimes in Ukraine means Moscow can no longer have a seat at the table. Russia has described the suspension as illegal and politically motivated. Meanwhile, NATO members have agreed to supply new and heavier weapons to Ukraine. Kyiv says it needs immediate reinforcement against Russia or it will be too late. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg has confirmed that a wide range of weapons are being sent to the country.
And the allies are providing them with different types of weapons, and we see the impact of these weapons on the battleground every day, because the Ukrainians have been able to inflict severe losses on the invading Russian forces.
The Prime Minister has defended the government's energy strategy after Labour criticised the plan as being too little, too late. The government says it wants to reduce the UK's dependence on overseas oil and gas by creating more nuclear, wind, solar and hydrogen power facilities. Under the plan, up to 8 nuclear reactors will be delivered by 2030. Ketanji Brown Jackson has become the first black woman in history to serve on the US Supreme Court. Her appointment fulfills President Joe Biden's campaign promise to ensure the federal judiciary has a broader range of backgrounds. The Senate vote to confirm the 51-year-old judge was 53-47. A gunman has killed at least 2 people in an attack at a bar in Tel Aviv in Israel. Hundreds of emergency responders arrived on the scene, and police searching for the shooter told residents to stay indoors. It is the latest in a string of deadly street assaults in the country. At least 4 people were wounded in the attack. The man accused of murdering Sir David Amess has told jurors he decided to kill the MP because he voted for airstrikes on Syria. Ali Harbi Ali told the court he had no regrets, saying, "If I thought I did anything wrong, I wouldn't have done it." Sir David was stabbed to death during a constituency surgery in Essex in October last year. The defendant has denied murder and preparing terrorist acts. And a security guard who worked at the British Embassy in Berlin has denied spying for Russia. David Smith, who was extradited from Germany, pleaded not guilty to 9 offences under the Official Secrets Act at Westminster Magistrates Court. He's due to reappear at the Old Bailey next week. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Welcome back. Time for tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. We have the first front pages in, and the Metro brands Russia a human rights pariah. The country has been shamed and stripped of its place on the United Nations Human Rights Council following a vote of 93-34 after it heard of various human rights violations since February's invasion of Ukraine. The Independent is putting the boot into Rishi Sunak after breaking that exclusive on his wife's tax affairs yesterday. They quote the leader of no opposition, Keir Starmer, who said the whole non-denominational affair row is breathtaking hypocrisy. Sunak allies claim number 10 is undermining the Chancellor. That's a fascinating one, according to the Daily Telegraph. Rishi Sunak in hot water, of course, over his wife's finances, according to some. Not me. I think he's done nothing wrong. But his allies are blaming number 10 after politically damaging leaks about the Chancellor. Oh, they never got on, do they? It was inevitable. My superstar panel are back with me now. The Conservative commentator Dominique Samuels, the former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the political editor of the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. Now, breaking tonight, Boris Johnson has unveiled his vision for powering the country and weaning us off Russian gas and oil. The PM hit the nuclear option with the new energy security strategy, announcing his intention to build 8 new power plants and, despite opposition from within his party, hugely expand wind power and other renewable sources.
This is the home of nuclear energy. We first split the atom in the UK. We had the first civilian nuclear power plant. We're bringing nuclear home with 1 nuclear plant and 1 nuclear reactor every year for 8 years rather than 1 a decade. This is about tackling some of the mistakes of the past and making sure that we are set well for the future. We're no longer subject to, we're never again subject to the vagaries of the global oil or gas price. We can't be subject to blackmail, as it were, from people such as Vladimir Putin. We have energy security here in the UK.
Very disappointingly, though, fracking was not front and centre of the energy blueprint, despite my pleas on the show this week to ignore Russian propaganda and eco-warriors like the grimy Just Stop Oil lot, they're awful, aren't they, who claim to have gotten inside the Kingsbury oil terminal in Warwickshire last night and have resorted to posting terrible David Attenborough impressions in their latest PR masterstroke.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Black Planet. I'm your host, David Attenborough, Jr., and we're here looking at the devastation that the black stuff that the Homo sapiens love so much, but is ultimately going to kill them all.
Yeah, that'll kickstart the revolution, won't it? The government said only that it would remain, quote, open-minded about shale gas and uphold a pause on fracking unless a proposed impartial review by the British Geological Society uncovered new evidence regarding its impact on seismic activity. Instead, the report became yet another piece of net zero grandstanding, announcing the PM's intention for an astonishing 95% of British electricity to be low carbon within just 8 years, while reducing consumption of gas from our North Sea reserves by over 40% in the same time frame. The aim is for the country's electricity system to be completely decarbonised by 2035. Of course, there's no mention as to how this will be achieved without bills skyrocketing even further. So, Dominic Samuels, were you disappointed by the green focus in this announcement today?
I mean, it's disappointing, but it's not entirely surprising given that, you know, this green agenda isn't unique to this country. It's more so a global effort, and the Prime Minister is in lockstep with that, unfortunately. My concern, as you've just mentioned, is that I don't see how this hurtling towards a green agenda in such a short space of time is both sustainable and actually fair.
Because you think there should be a referendum on net zero?
Yeah, I do think there should be a referendum on net zero. I think there should be proper debate about what the costs will be to the individual and about what kind of sacrifices we'll have to make pursuing this policy. Sacrifices in terms of, you know, what cars we drive, you know, the amount of meat that we eat, how we heat our homes, how we light our homes. These are all very, very pertinent issues that we will be directly affected by, as the government has already alluded to.
Yeah, and give us a choice. Nigel Nelson, interesting to hear from you on this because you describe yourself as a former climate change sceptic.
Yes, I was, probably about 10 years ago. And really what changed my mind was just looking around. The climate has obviously changed. You can see it every year, every summer we get a really hot spell, then we get a lot of rain coming in. We've seen flooding all over the country, and that's just in this country. All over the world, you're seeing disasters caused by climate change. So I then became a great fan of doing something about it. So, you know, I was quite pleased with some of the progress made at COP. Not enough, but it went some way. What Boris Johnson has done today is a move in the right direction. It's the correct road of travel. We may not achieve the 95% that he wants, but it is still worth striving for. However, it's the bits in between I can't work out where he can do something and he doesn't. So, for instance, the 25 million homes need to be insulated. We ought to be actually starting that now.
Well, you want the government to pay for that?
I do want the government to pay for that, and ultimately, of course, it would end up coming off our taxes. Or you go the Ed Miliband route and you borrow the money. You could just borrow it.
Sunak doesn't want to do that, Sean, does he?
You wouldn't be just borrowing the money because you'd also have to just pay it back. Look, what the Prime Minister did is good on two levels. Firstly, if you just want to set the climate agenda to the side for 1 second, it's about energy security. We're all about to have our bills hiked massively because we're relying on other people, other nations for our energy. If we can generate that ourselves, that will give us a freedom to control the cost and to control the environmental impact as well. That's why I'm glad the PM talked about nuclear, because that will give us the real bulk of power we can provide. Because if you look at the
Why
mess...
no fracking today, Sean?
We'll get there. If you look at the mess that Germany is in, part of it is because they went green with no sort of measures and got rid of all their nuclear. Now they're in a real pickle and they're beholden to Russia. We could avoid that. But let's be clear. To support the green agenda is absolutely the right thing to do and a good thing to do, as long as we can do it without too much cost to the British consumer. Because at the end of the day, people
that's what's happening.
Well, you don't know that
then you have to borrow the money.
No, you don't.
Why not raise taxes?
No, you don't, because we pay for the power. If you build these things and bring them online, we can do it in an affordable sense. If we just run out and borrow the whole cost, then we're sunk. We need to do it bit by bit.
This is a transition, Dominique, and that's why I keep saying we need to frack, because in the interim, we need to be sustainable before renewables.
Exactly, because these are very long-term goals. The government has already said,
especially
these
wind
new
and
plants,
solar.
Although nuclear, offshore, onshore wind, that's great. But what about in the meantime? And in the meantime, our bills are still going to be skyrocketing when, we have shale gas, we can frack. America has its own natural gas reserves, so that's why their bills aren't as high as ours. There are things that we can do.
No, but you're talking about these things as if they're going to be significantly quicker. What's really ruins infrastructure is if you waste your time and money on an interim...
Well, I agree, we should never have stopped fracking. We should never have stopped fracking. We should never have stopped the development of nuclear plants. But the point is, we are where we are. We are where we are.
Exactly, and that's why a plan to deliver 8 nuclear power stations in an 8-year period,
which is great,
actually is very short term.
But fracking should have been part of it.
Also, we are world leaders when it comes to generating our power by renewable means, and long should that remain, as long as we can do it economically.
We've got to do a mix. We have to do a mix.
We have to do a mix, and if we have to frack, I personally am not against fracking, but this is about developing
first. Let's actually.
It is safe.
Fine, but
completely safe.
It's
completely safe.
And there are more environmentally.
It's completely safe. Look, how do you do it? Because it's all going on in the US, and it's been going on in the US for years. And if you actually listen to the bloke from the University of Nottingham yesterday, in fact, coal mining caused exactly the same sort of earth tremors. They're not earthquakes, it's just little earth tremors.
But the idea of a survey by the Geological Society sounds to me like a good way forward to reassure
Well, we should just look at what's going on in the US. That's absolutely fine.
We should actually
It'll be great as long as they don't bow to political pressure, and they give us a real survey, not one that's.
And Nigel, you have to remember who's been spreading all of the negativity about fracking for so many years, as well as Thunberg and that weird loss. It's Putin and RT. But speaking of Just Stop Oil, those cretins are said to be planning a wave of further disruption at news sites across Britain from tomorrow. Can you believe this? The eco-troublemakers haven't revealed their new targets, but today promised there would be more chaos heading into the weekend. But I did want to bring you a bit of an update on the soot-covered pair I featured on yesterday's show, who comically filmed themselves hiding down a tunnel at the Essex oil terminal. I remember these two. They asked where everyone was and begged for an emergency response.
We want to have kids. That's why, one of the reasons why we're doing this.
Like, yeah. I'm wondering, like, where is everyone? Like, this is an emergency that we're in, and it needs an emergency response.
Well, here's the good news. I can tell you that chap actually got his emergency response, all right? The cops turned up and arrested him. Now, after failing to win over lovey Oscar voters 11 days ago, Benedict Cumberbatch has gone crawling back to his Marvel paymasters. Yes, despite not slapping a single person in attendance at the Hollywood ceremony, Benedict was passed over in favour of Will Smith for Best Actor. So now he's swapped the power of the dog for superpowers, his pretentious little Western for a Disney-backed blockbuster, and playing a cowboy for playing a zombie. Here he is, back as the time-bending Doctor Strange in the new trailer for Multiverse of Madness. Keep an eye out for his undead transformation.
The fate of the multiverse depends on us. Careful, Stephen. This path exacts a heavy toll. Okay.
The new film, these guys are big Marvel fans. I'm just a bit like, no, I'm not sure about it. But this film also stars Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay, good. And if rumours are to be believed, Patrick Stewart is going to reprise his role as X-Men boss, Professor X. Anyway, you'll find out it's in cinemas May the 5th. I didn't really know what was going on, but look, what I will say is it's going to be better than The Power of the Dog. That much I can promise you. Dominic Samuels, Sean Bailey, Nigel Nelson, do stand by, because coming up, as tennis world number 2 Daniil Medvedev faces a potential Wimbledon ban, are sanctions against Russian sports stars cancel culture? Well, that's the view of sacked F1 driver Nikita Mazepin, but I'll get my superstar panel's view as we can continue the media buzz. We'll have more of other newspaper front pages coming in too. But next, after Meghan tries to claim ownership over the English language, does her entitlement know no bounds? Will top Daily Telegraph columnist and best-selling author Celia Walden gives her searing take straight after the break.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
And we're back. First, she got her claws into Prince Harry and her feet under the royal table. Now Meghan Markle. She's trying to hijack the English language, believe it or not. The Hollywood celebrity, we're still meant to call the Duchess of Sussex for some unknown reason, has applied to the US Patent Office to trademark the word archetypes, which is also the name of her upcoming and sure to be infuriating Spotify podcast. Now, the word derives from Greek and has been used in the English language for 470 years. But of course, the wannabe Hollywood star thinks it would be best placed attached to her simpering brand. She wants it to be applied to goods and services related to, quote, the fields of cultural treatment of women and stereotypes facing women. However, she could face legal challenges from brands that already use the word in their names. Well, joining me now to break down this utter nonsense is the Daily Telegraph star columnist Celia Walden, who says the Sussexes' self-absorption and narcissism is now flagrant enough to be tiresome even to their most tireless critics. And let me tell you, I'm one of them, Celia, I have to be completely honest. And you're not far from Harry and Meghan right now. I mean, do people over there take them more seriously than we do here now?
No, well, I should say, so yes, I'm currently in LA, and I was just saying to a friend of mine out here that when I first came back here after the pandemic, I was sort of expecting, I thought maybe, well, Meghan's one of their own, maybe they're quite protective of her or defensive, but not at all. She's just a figure of fun out here, and what the crucial misstep that she made is forgetting that in California, people, and in the whole of the US, in fact, people love the Queen. And so anyone who's been deemed to, have sort of affronted the Queen or behaved badly in that regard is just not going to go down well.
That's interesting, actually. Meghan, is this the type of thing, Celia, that people do over there, though, try and claim a word? Because you remember Posh Spice tried to do it once back in her heyday and was very quickly found out.
Found out, I know, and there was some sort of ludicrous legal sort of battle around it, wasn't it? Which is where things get very embarrassing. I mean, this is just, it's been unanimously agreed that this is a preposterous thing to do, and in fact, the only thing that she should be trademarking is possibly, well, a few words. Maybe she could trademark arrogant, entitled. And preposterous, because all of those things are uniquely her. But this has been around for a while as a word, but it's just so archetypal of her sort of narcissism, isn't it? It just, the idea that you can own a word. Why not try and own the Parthenon while you're at it? It's just a sort of. But I do think we've now reached a point where, even though I never cease to be amazed when these stories come up, and you would think by now that we would get used to it, I never stop being surprised at how badly both of them really have messed up, what could have been a really sort of easy win for them.
Exactly. There's almost, Celia, this gross commercialisation of everything they do. And why do they need to go down that path? They're being paid tens of millions of bucks by Netflix, tens of millions of bucks by Spotify. They have the deal with the bank. It feels like it's never enough for them.
No, and the other thing that I think it is going to be a problem is that all of this at the moment is bluster and hot air and sort of grandstanding. And actually, think about it. This deal, this Spotify deal was done in 2020, supposedly for 18 million, which is a huge amount of money. But at some stage, they're going to have to deliver the goods. So, all this sort of protection and sort of creation talk of sort of big talk of creating brands and exactly what's going to happen. But what have we actually seen? What have they produced at the moment? It's no good.
So far for Spotify, they've produced about 20 minutes of content. It was utterly awful. And I don't know about you, but I have absolutely zero interest in listening to Meghan talk to other famous celebrity women moaning about how tough their life is, when I think she has the most privileged life that any human being could possibly have.
Well, by any yardstick, she does, and so this she's going to have to rebrand herself at some point. She's going to have to actually produce the goods. So it's no good building a castle around your assets with all these legal situations if you don't have any assets. Just first of all show people what you can do, because otherwise these companies are they'll drop them, because there comes a point where the royal name is not enough. And secondly, I think she really needs to step away from the whinging, because it's not going to serve her well.
Well, that's the thing, Celia. I think about it, and actually, she has rebranded. She's rebranded as a victim. That's how she wants to be viewed, and I find it so bizarre.
But that is a cultural thing, where there is, victimhood is not only provides status, but it provides a lot of cash. It's a business opportunity. So wherever she sees victimhood at the moment, she's right on that.
I know, it's completely fascinating to me. Of course, at the same time, she also has this deal with Netflix. Netflix in the headlines this week because there's a very negative documentary about Prince Charles and his relationship with Jimmy Savile. Of course, that is a legitimate journalistic project. However, what I would say, Celia, is it's very interesting, isn't it? Meghan and Harry are so keen to speak up against Joe Rogan and Spotify, against tabloid newspapers who they don't like, against social media, but they won't say a thing when their own employer seems to constantly want to gun for their own relatives.
Yes, I think where morality and sort of ethics are concerned, both of those things tend to fly out the window where there's enormous sort of quantities of dollar signs from what we've seen so far. And again, you know, you don't have to be even critical of them to see that. So what I've noticed is a lot of people who were very much sort of backing them and defending Meghan particularly, for example, have now given up and said, look, I really didn't want to be one of those Meghan bashers because I thought they were awful, but actually I can't fight it anymore. And you know, it's because this is what she's got 11 companies, or they've now got 11 companies, which what are they all doing, these companies? What are they producing? I'm fascinated. So you get this image of her behind some sort of Bond, you know, villain with a white cap, with all the in her Montecito mansion. But you know what is very, very busy. But show us what you're producing then.
So it's interesting, Celia. You do think the tide is turning in the US against the Sussexes?
I do, and actually, I wrote a column after the Oscars talking about which I thought actually no, after the BAFTAs, sorry, about how fascinating that was that Rebel made that joke, and there what, you know, normally one would expect these are sort of their people, don't forget. So normally one would expect a bit of a sharp intake of breath or maybe even booing, but not at all. It was unanimous laughter because they are now officially you know, figures of fun. And I think that is going to be most upsetting to her because it's the furthest thing that she wants.
They will be seething in the Montecito mansion, Celia. I hope you bump into them and give them some tough words in Hollywood. That would be nice. Do keep us posted. That's Star Daily Telegraph columnist and best-selling author Celia Wootton. Celia, it's so lovely to speak to you. But coming up, after a new government report reveals ethnic minority pupils are happier, more confident and more successful, actually, than their white peers, will the left finally accept that Britain's education system is not racist? Writer and commentator Rakib Ehsan gives his analysis in Uncancelled soon. But next, in Media Buzz, as the G7 condemns atrocities committed by Russia, is it fair for the country's sportsmen and women to be bearing the brunt? My Superstar panel return to debate Formula One driver Nikita Mazepin's claims that sanctions are cancel culture in action. That's next.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70 150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. I've got more front pages for you here. The Times, leaning on the same story as the Daily Telegraph earlier, actually. Rishi Sunak believes the stories about his family money are a political hit job designed to cause maximum damage. That's according to the Times. The Chancellor thinks the timing of the revelations about his wife's non-dom tax status were no accident. Allies of Rishi even say the leaks could be a criminal offence, though neither of the couple have gone to the police. So a lot more unravelling here. The Guardian, well, of course, they love this story, don't they? They don't want anyone to be wealthy, unless you happen to work for them. And they continue the coverage, of course, of the tax affairs by claiming Rishi's wife may have avoided up to £20 million as a non-dom. The paper claims it cost Akshatar Murthy around £30,000 a year to keep the low tax status. The low tax status, by the way, which she has because she's an Indian citizen. She was born in India, and the Indian rules say that you cannot have dual citizenship of another country. So what are we saying? She must give it up. She must give up her Indian citizenship. It's just verging on racism, this. Pack it in, declares the Daily Star. This is after crisp-loving Brits panic buy Walker's products in anticipation of the brand changing its recipe to be more healthy. Do you know what? I feel strongly about this. So let me tell you what's happening first. Doritos Dippers, Baked and Potworks are all set to be given a taste overhaul in line with Walker's pledge to make at least half of its sales from healthy or low-calorie products by 2025. Nigel Nelson, Sean Bailey, Dominique Samuels back with me on the Superstar panel. I don't like this. I don't like this. I like healthy versions of products being available, but keep the original version too. Because you know what I love? Frosties cereal. And I hardly ever have it. But every now and then, I want to have a treat and I want to have my bowl of Frosties. Well, you might as well buy Special K now because it doesn't taste like what Frosties used to taste like.
At all. That's so true.
And I just feel like we have to have choice.
Yeah,
don't
that's
we?
exactly what I was going to say. People should have the option, and when you remove choice from people, it becomes a bit of a dictatorship.
And what are we going to start doing? Trying to make Domino's pizza healthy? Try and make a Big Mac healthy?
Yeah,
no.
it's just silly.
Have your originals and then give people the option to have a healthy choice.
But to be fair, and this has become quite controversial, I actually don't disagree with forcing restaurants to put calories
really?
next to food. Yeah, I think for me, when I'm dieting
so
as well,
miserable.
It's really helpful to me.
Listen, people will vote with their feet. You eat a packet of crisps because you like the way they taste. You know, you don't go to crisps for your healthy option.
No.
Yeah.
And again, what I would say, Dominique, I think it should be available, but I think you should have to ask for the
without
calorie
being
information.
staring
because
in
it's
your face,
the having it there. And also, if you just want to have a day off, you know,
if you want loads
or
of
for
calories,
anorexic
you
people.
can eat loads of calories. It doesn't hurt.
Exactly.
But it doesn't hurt to have it in front of you so you know you're doing it.
It helps me. So personally, when I'm dieting and I think, I want a McDonald's, I don't deprive myself of the McDonald's, but I want to know what's going in.
Yeah.
That's
No, look, believe me, I've made a couple of healthier choices already, but I feel bitter about it.
That increases your choice. Knowing what's in it actually increases your choices. You're making an informed choice. Where the problem is when they remove the choice. That's where the problem is.
Now, breaking tonight, Russia has been suspended from the UN's Human Rights Council following allegations of war crimes by Putin's troops in Ukraine. It's another sanction that confirms the country as a pariah on the world stage. But is it fair for Russian sports stars to face a similar exile? Russian Formula One driver Nikita Mazepin lost his seat with the Haas team before the season began after he and his father Dmitry were sanctioned by the EU. Dmitry is a billionaire oligarch and ex-part owner of Haas S1, who is said to be within Putin's inner circle. But Mazepin likened the sanctions against him and other Russian athletes to cancel culture.
You know, if you look at the whole situation that's happening against, athletes and in the general case, it's cancel culture against my country. My feelings, they obviously changed as a human being and as a person that wants to live in a very peaceful world. But I will be honest with you, I see tremendous risks in saying anything at all about this case, because I will never satisfy everyone.
Mazepin stopped short of condemning the war. As you can see there, something Sports Minister Nigel Huddleston wants to make a condition for Russian participation in major competitions. And Wimbledon reportedly ready to ban world number 2 tennis star Daniil Medvedev because he could win the tournament and give Putin political capital. But remember, he already competes under a neutral flag. However, Huddleston also wants assurances that Russian and Belarusian athletes aren't making money from Putin or supporting his regime before they compete. So are sanctions against Russian sports people cancel culture in action or a necessary reaction to the horrors we're seeing in Ukraine, Dominique?
I'm sorry, I just think it's wrong. And I hate to draw parallels with COVID, but it seems that we've never really taken it this far before, where when we're engaging in a war that we all condemn, you're then seeking to cancel anything and everything that's connected with Russia in any way, shape or form. Just like sections of our society were fully prepared to bar people from earning a living, from frequenting bars and restaurants simply because they decided to make a medical choice. I feel like we've cultivated this culture of just nastiness, and I don't think people should be punished simply for being Russian or simply because, you know, their parents have connections with Vladimir Putin. I mean, he's an extremely powerful man, and it may be in the benefit of these people that are oligarchs to be on friendly terms with him. In some cases, it means life or death. I think people forget that. It's a dictatorship.
Sean, you're a big F1 fan. Do you think this is the right decision?
I think in the case of F1, it's a special case. Dmitry, who's Mazepin's father, his money is oligarch money linked to Putin in a very negative way. So I can see how that connection was very easily made. And let's be frank, he wasn't doing that well, and the Haas team probably just wanted rid of him to get a better driver. But when I looked at this whole thing of do we cancel people in sports in general, I think too many of the sporting bodies are reacting to politics and it's dragging them in. What they should do is set out their stall very early on and say, we will remove a national team in these circumstances. And unless they say that, they're at the vagaries of being cancelled. So what happens is people come on Twitter, you know, the national cycling industry or somebody feels nervous and cancel someone. They should have a clear set of parameters as to why they're doing it, not just do it because they're nervous of not looking like they're supporting.
But Nigel Nelson, if you look at Medvedev, for example, he doesn't compete under the Russian flag, and actually he, I believe, previously actually on camera at a tennis tournament wrote on the camera, "Stop war." So why is he going to be punished?
I think you ought to actually freeze Russia out completely from the civilised world. That means arts, it means sport, it means culture.
So just to interrupt there, would you get the BBC to sack someone like Katia Jones, who's been on Strictly Come Dancing for years and years and years because she happens to be Russian?
No, it's not a matter of happening to be Russian, but when you're talking about international competition, that's where you draw the line, and people should... I mean, this is a country that's trying to cancel out Ukraine, and unless you freeze Russia completely, and that has to affect the Russian people as well, we've got no quarrel with them, but it must affect them as well, in the hope that they realise the damage that Putin is causing and actually getting...
It's counterproductive.
It
All it's doing is bolstering a narrative that the West is just purely anti-Russian and just hates Russia. So any information that the West tries to disseminate to Russian people, they're going to view it with just as much prejudice as they're being told by the government, because we're being, quite frankly, really unfair and disproportionate.
What we run the risk of doing there, right, is driving Russia into the hands of Putin. He'll be able to say, look, they're cancelling our players who have nothing to do with this. That is happening.
No, you do the opposite. But the whole thing is that we don't have any row with the Russian people. It's not their fault this war is going on.
Yeah,
but they are the ones who will get rid of Putin.
How?
Listen, this is where I have to pick up. We will have a row with Russian people. You have people who are Russian heroes who are not even competing under the Russian flag, and then we remove them. It then becomes a fight with the Russian people. We need to be careful about who we cancel.
I really don't think someone like Putin cares about all of that. He has one agenda, and it's, you know, apparently to denazify and demilitarize Ukraine. I don't think he's bothered about this sportsman or that sportsman being cancelled. I think
exactly.
It's a really surface
He's not
level
bothered, but the Russian people are bothered. The people who follow sport, who like art,
but in what
the
way
people who are suffering from the sanctions, they are bothered enough, and that's the one way that we might be able to encourage them to get rid of this dictator.
To do what?
Get rid of him.
Look,
How though?
imagine...
I actually want you to answer this, though.
OK. Well, the how is that it's clearly not... Unless you have an uprising in Russia, which is highly unlikely.
So one...
It is... There is an opposition movement in Russia. The answer would be that the generals and the intelligence chiefs get together and remove him because of the damage that he is doing to Russia.
So a coup, basically.
You're talking about a regime.
Yeah.
Look, the bottom line is this: if you punish Russian heroes in that sense, particularly ones who are not competing under the Russian flag, you will push Russia into Putin's hands. And there's a difference, I believe, in a national team, a national body, say the Russian, basketball team versus Russian individuals.
I don't think Russian teams should be able to compete. Absolutely. But look, on a similar note, it's actually safe to say sanctions aren't going down too well among Russian spoilt socialites. This is quite fascinating. Rich Russian individuals have filmed themselves going into meltdown if they suffered the hideous fate of being barred from buying new Chanel handbags. Armed with a pair of scissors and pathetic self-importance, the wealthy brats butchered the handbags that the French designer now refuses to sell to them anywhere in the world. TV presenter and actress Marina Yermoshkina expressed outrage to her 300,000 followers, saying, "Not a single item or brand is worth my love for my motherland and my self-respect." So I guess ignorance must be in vogue among Moscow's models, as there was no mention of the war and its thousands of victims. But this is happening, Dominique, in lots of ways. Spotify will be leaving the country, and I guess Nigel's point would be that at some point Russians are going to wake up about what it means to leave the international community.
I mean, yeah, I suppose so. I mean, I get the logic behind it, but my bugbear is I'm just not sure of what the actual long-term goals are, because I think we can all agree that we want the war to end, and I'm just wondering, how is doing this piece by piece, how does that actually... Like, how does it develop an end in sight for the war?
Nigel, I guess you would say increasing the pressure on Putin by the day for him to cause
so how long do we want this to last then?
Basically,
how long do we want this to last then? Because from where I'm
sitting...
For
as limited a time as possible.
But from where I'm sitting now and looking at the strategy that the US seems to be spearheading, which is to slowly grind Russia to a halt, surely this is going to take a good few years, no?
Well, it could do. I mean, the whole thing is that all these kind of measures should be in place for as long as there are Russian troops in Ukraine.
I think there's a difference between economic measures and political measures. But this measure in particular, I just worry that you'll be pushing Russia into the hands of Putin, because a bullied set of people clubbed together, they react differently.
And these are...
Well, and that's clearly what's happening when you look at the Russian socialites. Dominic Samuel, Sean Bailey, Nigel Nelson do stand by, because coming up, it's the only place you'll see a Bake-Off star and the richest man in the world mentioned in the same breath. Yes, the crowning of the final greatest Briton and Union jackass of the week, coming up with my superstar panel soon. But first, after a new government report reveals ethnic minority pupils are happier, more confident and more successful than their white peers, will the left finally accept that Britain's education system isn't racist? Rakib Hassan uncancelled right after a very quick look at what's coming up on Monday.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, as the woke backlash against basic biology gets ever nastier, I'll sit down with Team USA runner Cynthia Montellino, who says she was told keep your mouth shut after raising concerns about competing against a trans athlete. What impact did lockdown have on those battling eating disorders? The mother of TV favourite Nikki Graham believes isolation was the final blow in the tragic star's lifelong struggle. She'll give evidence in my lockdown inquiry 1 year on from Nikki's passing. Plus, GBNews star Neil Oliver and Positive Professor Carol Sikora give their take on the news, and I'll be joined all night by my superstar panel. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and social commentator Esther Kraku. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GBNews. But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, the victimhood-obsessed left would have you believe Britain's schools are centres of oppression for this country's ethnic minorities. But a bombshell new report shows that, au contraire, non-white school children are actually far happier and more academically confident than their faltering white peers. A Department of Education survey of almost 9,000 families found pupils from Indian, Chinese, Pakistani, Bangladeshi and Black African backgrounds achieve on average far better GCSE grades than their white British counterparts, and they're bullied less too. Ethnic minority parents also had a far more positive perception of their children's well-being than white parents, and they were more likely to encourage their children to take A-levels. And last year, an Education Committee report revealed that less than 18% of white British kids eligible for free school meals achieved a strong pass in English and maths GCSEs compared to 22.5% of disadvantaged pupils from other ethnic groups. That equates to nearly 40,000 white working-class children missing out. So, will the left now finally accept that Britain's education system is not institutionally racist? Rakib Hassan joins me now. Rakib, your take?
Well, my take is that the narrative that Britain's systems are deliberately rigged against its racial and ethnic minorities, that miserable grievance-fueled narrative is crumbling. Dan, that's the truth of it. This new government report shows that ethnic minority pupils are more academically confident. Their parents are more likely to encourage them to take on A-levels. Their pupils, ethnic minority pupils, are less likely to be bullied. And you talked about the average attainment 8 scores there. Average attainment 8 scores. Those are pupils' results over 8 GCSE level qualifications. When compared to the white British mainstream, pupils of Chinese, Indian, Bangladeshi, Pakistani and Black African origin outperform their white British peers. That doesn't sound like an education system which is deliberately rigged against racial and ethnic minorities. And it certainly doesn't sound like our schools across the country are hubs of racial victimisation.
But no one in the mainstream media wants to talk about this, do they, Rakib? And we saw from the Sewell report that any time there's any suggestion that Britain isn't institutionally racist, our elites don't like it. They just want to go no.
Absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely remarkable. And the reality is that you have the left now, who at one time would have championed positive forms of integration among racial and ethnic minorities. Yes. They're now looking to conceal that because they want to protect their precious white privilege narratives. And what they're ultimately looking to do is hide forms of ethnic minority and non-white success, but also very severe forms of underprivilege within the white British mainstream.
And Rakib, we also, let's be honest, need to start talking about white working class kids and what we're going to do to help them. But again, that doesn't fit the narrative, does it?
No, it doesn't. And the reality is, if you're talking about disadvantage and underprivilege, some of the most disadvantaged communities, left behind communities in Britain, are predominantly white British. They're socially atomised, culturally marginalised, materially deprived. So I think that we really, when we're looking at social policy, when we're looking at educational outcomes, we need to talk more about family structure, Dan. We need to talk about the health of our local communities. Do those local communities that young people live in, does it provide them with a sense of belonging and rootedness? And I think instead of obsessing over protected characteristics such as race, ethnicity, religious belief, we need to focus more on what are the kind of social networks, what are the kind of family structures that our young people belong to when we're looking at school attainment.
I completely agree with that, Rakib, but all I would say is that if this survey had found the opposite results and had found that ethnic minorities were far less successful in schools rather than white working class kids, it would be leading the BBC News, it would be leading ITV News, it would be the front page of The Guardian, and that hypocrisy has to be called out.
Oh, it has to be. It is deeply hypocritical. And this comes to my point, though, that our mainstream liberal institutions, they can't find it within themselves to celebrate forms of ethnic minority success.
Exactly.
Because ultimately they're involved in the sustaining of these narratives, which ultimately portrays Britain as a fundamentally racist society.
Yeah, because that's what they want people to believe. Rakiva-san, fascinating analysis as ever. You wrote a great spiked online column about this, which I really recommend people do check out. Thank you so much, Rakiv. Time now to reveal today's greatest Briton and Union jackass. My superstar panel return. Dominique Samuels, let's kick off with you. Who is your nomination for greatest Briton tonight?
Well, my honorary nomination is Elon Musk, the world's richest man, for buying a 9.2% stake in Twitter recently, becoming its biggest shareholder. I think this is brilliant as he's become really critical of Twitter's censorship as of recent, and I think it may take Twitter in the right direction.
We will see. I certainly hope so. There's reason to hope. Sean Bailey, your greatest Briton nominee.
My greatest Briton nominee is Sharon Davies for her staunch defence of women's rights in this country. You may know her. She's a former Olympic swimmer, has had a lot to say about the rights of women in sports and women in general, and I want to make her my nominee tonight.
She's done so incredibly on this. She has been brave. She spoke about it before it was an issue dominating the media. She's had death threats as a result. She's had people try to cancel her as a result, but she knew she was right. She stuck to her guns. I think she's been absolutely superb.
The word here is brave, and that's why I nominated her tonight. She's stuck to her guns throughout, through all the attacks, through all the cancelling. She's kept going.
Nigel Nelson, your nominee for Greatest Britain.
Yeah, my shout-out is for the older worker, and it's Mary Berry, who's 87. She's just recovering from a busted hip. And although she says she won't be bungee jumping for a while, she has no plans to retire.
Bless her. All great nominees. But I'm going to go with Sean on this one and say Sharon Davies is today's greatest Briton. In fact, she's my greatest Briton for the week. She's just been so powerful on this issue of protecting women's sport, which needs to be protected. Union jackass time now. Dominique Samuels, your nominee.
Mine is the eco-protesters, namely those...
Oh, there they are! He's in jail now, though. Woo!
Demanding that we sit in the cold and the dark because of their irrational fears about climate change, and they quite frankly need to go away.
They're embarrassing, aren't they, though? Isn't it good, though, Dominique, that we can see their arguments because it shows how they're just based on fear and nothing else?
Yeah, it's extremely irrational, and I think it's just scary that so many young people really are buying into this. And
it's like a cult.
It's very organised and really well funded, and it makes me a bit suspicious, not gonna lie.
Sean Bailey, your nominee for Union Jackass.
My nominee for Union Jackass is the author of Squid Game. For those of you who don't know, it's a very gory, really quite extreme programme that was on Netflix. Well,
Dominique loves it.
It's not that extreme.
Well, now...
Oh, it is, Dominique. Oh, it is.
It is extreme. He has a new project that he's writing, he says will be even more controversial, called Killing Old People.
Yes.
Don't tell Mary Berry.
I am appalled by the title. I'm appalled by what it suggests. And I think content creators do have some moral duty to us all. And something called the Killing Old People Club. Come on, the Killing Old People Club is disgraceful. We treat old people very badly anyway. We don't need to add this.
This guy has a very warped mind. I'm sorry, Dominic.
Yes, he does.
Nigel Nelson, your Union Jackass nominee.
Yeah, mine is George Galloway, who's in a strop over Twitter, labelling his account as Russian state-affiliated media. When, of course, George himself worked for Radio Sputnik and RT, which is, guess what? Russian state media.
Dominique, did you think this was fair?
I don't really care that much, but to be honest, his argument is that he once did work for Russian state media and his account wasn't designated as Russian affiliated then. Now that he does...
Well, are they going to do it to Alex Salmond, I guess, would be my question, because if they're doing it to George Galloway, Alex Salmond was working for RT until just literally when the invasion happened. He was still presenting a show. But look, I'm going to go with Dominique and these eco-protesting loons. But I like the fact that they are exposing themselves, Dominique, with these ridiculous, embarrassing videos. Dominique Samuels, Sean Bailey, Nigel Nelson, my last superstar panel of the week. It's been so great to have you. Thank you so much for your company all week. I'm, of course, back on Monday night at 9 p.m. Have a fabulous weekend. Good night.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Strong northerly winds have brought cold air southwards across the country, and with clearing skies overnight, we'll see a frosty start to Friday. But Friday promises at least some sunny spells. Low pressure is moving away, however, it leaves a legacy of north to northwesterly winds, cold air, and further showers during the rest of Thursday. Those showers increasingly, though, easing away inland, and they'll be more and more confined to northwestern coasts. But they'll still be of a wintry nature. We can expect snow above 150 metres for the hills of Scotland and some icy patches here first thing Friday. But otherwise, clear spells and a fairly widespread frost to kick things off. 1 degree there in Hull, 3 Celsius for Manchester. Temperatures below zero in sheltered spots. But in the far south, cloudier skies, some outbreaks of mainly light rain skirting along the south coast, keeping things frost-free as we start the day, but hanging about for much of the day, I think, in the far southeast. That eventually clears, and then it's sunny spells and showers for many. Again, the showers, mixture of rain, sleet and hail at lower levels, snow over hills. 12 Celsius in the south, 8 for Manchester, I think 6, 7, 8 degrees for much of Scotland. And it'll feel cold in the wind, but the wind is easing compared to Thursday. There'll be further showers coming through on Friday night into the early hours of Saturday for northern Scotland, Northern Ireland, North Wales. And again, a few icy patches around as we start off the weekend, because it's going to be widely a cold start to the weekend with a widespread frost once again. But despite the chill, actually, plenty of sunshine first thing Saturday, and with light winds, temperatures will rise through the day. As a result, the clouds will bubble up and we'll see further showers here and there, particularly in the north. In the south, that's where the best of the sunshine will be, and feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine. Another frosty start to Sunday before a largely dry and bright day.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls, and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate, and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.